And we're live. So while you say hi, I'm going to change the background.
Hi.
There
We're
we
going to
go.
do crypto today, guys. So this is impromptu, not planned, but sometimes when we both have time and something that's grabbing our attention and it feels very timely, we're not going to just wait for bootlegs. So that's what this is. So I'm going to tap out in an hour, but we'll look and talk a lot about crypto today, maybe a couple other things too. As always, feel free to put your comments and questions in the chat, and we'll be looking at. This, by the way, I'm a Forbes. I'm a technical, a tech analyst now. Apparently,
Yeah, he's a
Forbes. So
Forbes technology blogger.
they all wear ties. I'm told anyway. So.
Why are you
Yeah, it's
broadcasting from a submarine?
so the audio and visual will be very, very low quality. This is just on my laptop, so that's what I'm not at home right now. So yeah.
But we did get some big news today, Mr. Donald Pump with crypto news.
So so can we do a timeline like leading up to what happened today? Because I think that there's a couple things that kind of set the stage for it, and I'm glad to do that. And we'll talk about maybe each piece, and then we'll look at the price action.
Yeah, you can definitely do a timeline.
All right, so this was from David Sachs, and of course he's the czar of crypto, and he said this was actually very recently, February 28th, so 2 days ago. President Trump will host the first White House Crypto Summit on Friday, March 7th, and so that's coming right up. Attendees will include prominent founders, CEOs, and investors from the crypto industry. Looking forward to seeing everyone there. So obviously, Coinbase, obviously there'll be some big banks there, Robinhood. Don't know about SoFi. SoFi should be there, hopefully, but it may be a bit by invite only. And this isn't a small deal at all. Them doing something like this, even just having a crypto czar, the market kind of went a risk-off mode. And we'll look at the next piece here in just a second. But what do you think that is going to? Well, actually, maybe we'll do a recap afterwards. So just timeline. Okay, next. Breaking. This is, by the way, 3:15 a.m. my time, so 4:15 Eastern time. Someone has opened two massive 50x long positions, 72 million on Bitcoin and 123 million on Ethereum. Does he know something? Did he know something, Tevis?
Somebody
Yeah,
always knows.
somebody always knows,
Always.
and that was the case here. Now, Donald Trump, this is on Truth Social, just reposted from that. A U.S. crypto reserve will elevate this critical industry after years of corrupt attacks by Biden administration, which is why my executive order on digital assets directed to the presidential working group to move forward on a crypto strategic reserve that includes XRP, Solana, Cardano, also known as ADA, Ethereum, and Bitcoin also, guys. I will make sure the U.S. is the crypto capital of the world. We are, all quotes, or all caps, making America great again. And here's the price action. Up a cool 9.6%. Don't know if zooming in, that's not going to really help. So maybe I'll do something different here. It's not the only thing that's up. Pretty much everything in crypto is pumping. Cardano's up 56%. Solana is up 22%. ETH is up 12%, and
that's a weird color on that ETH chart. I've never seen that color before on ETH.
Green. Yeah, it's weird. XRP is up 26%, and then Trump's coin itself, worth looking at, it's up 28%, which is funny because it really doesn't have anything to do with that. So I will stop sharing that screen. Thoughts, Tevis?
I mean, we knew this was coming. We knew this was on the way. It was one of the campaign trail promises that was just a matter of time until it happened. I thought it was interesting because the original tweet didn't include Bitcoin or Ethereum. And I thought, oh, wow, they're going to be only including these like US, coins. And then he reiterated saying, of course, Bitcoin and ETH are going to be there, which is great because those are two of the things that I hold. And I don't hold Ripple or ADA or anything else like that. I do hold Sol though.
Yeah, I picked ADA. Should have picked Sol, but hey, ADA is feeling pretty good today. So
yeah, ADA is not I mean, it's going to get pumped up because of this administration. I There was another tweet as well. I think it was from David Sachs, who basically said there's a lot more that's coming on Friday when they are going to have their crypto summit thing. So I would be expecting more news to be dropping um, this week as they do their summit. We'll see. They're probably going to lay out a plan as to how they are going to be ramping up these assets and what that strategic reserve aspect looks like. I know we were getting criticism from people being like, "Oh well, you know," like I know Joseph Carlson was one of the people who was like, "You work for your money. You're obligated to pay tax. Those tax dollars now go into shit coins." And I was like, "Okay, well, you can't impress everybody, man. Like, I don't know."
So Ben Eats asked, "How is this strategic?" So what's the point of a strategic reserve? What is it? What does it mean? What does it imply? What's the plan? By the way, what flavor are you drinking?
There's okay, so we only have 3 flavors up here in Canada. This is a problem, and I always alternate between these 3 flavors. And I cranked open a can just because we were going on live. That's probably why I asked you to go on live, honestly, because I was craving a Celsius. Um,
I mean, there's worse habits. Go live, drink a Celsius.
Absolutely, and I have time right now, and I won't have time throughout the week. And I've really been thinking about what video do I want to make because I can only probably make one video this week, and so got to take the quick wins where I can, and that's why we're live right now. Why is it strategic? Well, I think like the easy answer there is that if it's an asset that has value or is a store of value that's seen as digital gold, and the U.S. can build a reserve of that asset, then they can also front run other countries and bolster their own economic position. Everything else is based on the US dollar as the reserve currency. And so essentially the US leading the charge for having a strategic national reserve is essentially them building up their arsenal of this valuable store of wealth, similar to gold or silver or the other ones that we currently have.
Oil, yeah, as well. There's a number of them. Fort Knox. We'll see if they actually has any gold there. Some people might argue, well, what's the utility of it? I think at this point, at least where we are with Bitcoin, it's undeniable that there's enough institutional purchasing, enough countries that are interested in doing this. Like the United States is not going to be like the last country that gets into this kind of reserve. And so, over the long term, I think Bitcoin's going to do very, very well. Like short term, like I think that this, I'm actually kind of curious, Tevis. So let me throw this up and we'll just talk about the cycle and then maybe we'll circle back here.
I also want to just keep on this topic for a second and just ask you to push back. So maybe we'll jump to that tweet in a second. What is the thought process, Roy, around adding more assets to that strategic reserve? Like, let's just say the US never recognizes the potential for Bitcoin and they let China and they let all these other countries in the world build up their reserves, but they never want to play that game. Like, what is the game theory around the US wanting to have a piece of that particular pie?
Sure. So I guess I should contextualize this answer a little bit. There are like the largest strategic reserve that's pure financial is in Norway. That we've talked about this, I believe, in the past. I know I talked about it with somebody where that's largely funded from tax revenue off of oil dollars, petrodollars. And so they've reinvested a portion of that in real estate. They've invested that in bonds. Invested that in precious metals. They've invested that in stocks, equities. And they're the largest, I believe, fund out there, period. Just because they've done well, they've invested well, and they have a lot of money that's coming in. And the point of that is basically that's a sovereign wealth fund. So not quite the same thing, but it allows them to fund a whole lot of things in their country long term. It's not just a one-time sugar rush from revenue. Now, Trump talked about doing something like that for the United States. This was months ago. And I felt like it'd be a good idea, but they really need to get a handle on the debt and the deficit first. Two separate issues, but very interrelated. This I don't feel like is quite the same thing. I think it's a lot closer to a strategic reserve, such as with any other commodity, and it allows them to deploy that selectively. Bitcoin itself, it's referred to as digital gold, and so if Bitcoin does what I think it might do over the next 10, 20, 30 years, I mean, people will look at this as a seminal moment for crypto, partly, but also see the outsized benefit to the United States, both in terms of like leading the way with governance and regulation, which the crypto industry desperately needs, but also, that this could be a meaningful asset reserve, just like I think, frankly, better than having like cash or even gold in Fort Knox, which, people could ask the same thing. Like, why have gold in Fort Knox at all? Why not just sell it and use that to help, fund the deficit? You want, as a country, especially this large, to have a diversified, also, that's the last piece, a diversified pool of assets. And so, like, if they're going all in on like crypto and like selling all the gold for crypto, I would not be in favor of that. That would be a mistake. But I think that diversifying these type of strategic reserves is a really good thing.
Yeah, and maybe just to build a little bit on that comment, it also helps the U.S. stay competitive with other countries because, I mean, like China is doing a digital CBDC. Like El Salvador moved to Bitcoin as their legal tender as a whole. Many countries are moving towards that route. And then it also helps with regards to national debt and maintaining the dollar's dominance in general, because you have a fixed supply of Bitcoin. And it's a harder currency than the US dollar, which gets inflated away and obviously balloons that national debt. And so if you diversify by building a national crypto reserve, you can diversify your assets and essentially hedge your bets against the dollar that's going to be weakening. And you just strengthen your own position there because the dollar is the world's reserve currency. And so that's, I think, the game theory aspect of why the US should be getting into it. Then you also have like geopolitical tensions as well, because you have the BRICS countries that now are talking about moving off the dollar. And we're seeing more and more with the surge of crypto that financial systems are being weaponized, like through sanctions, through trade disputes. You can see what happened with regards to like, a lot of the, with regards to like China or Russia and Ukraine, like a lot of the levers that they're pulling are financial levers, and that's what's going to be the first thing to go. And so that reserve can also provide strategic advantages with regards to establishing international trade, maintaining the dollar's dominance throughout the world. And so it's just important all around to essentially hedge your bets into a harder form of currency overall. So I think we sort of addressed this one a little bit. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. So the reason why, by this, we're not just referring to the strategic reserve, we're referring to all of this, at least I am. And so that symposium that they have on crypto is significant. The way that they've talked about crypto is very significant. And the biggest piece, and the reason why it's really, really good for the dollar, Bitcoin itself is like, it's okay for the dollar. It's not terrible. Mm-hmm. Stable coins are incredibly good for the dollar. The reason why is most stable coins, especially those that have any kind of volume, are US denominated. They're USD backed. So USDC, Tether, of course, which I'm not a great fan of, PayUSD, the global dollar. There's a whole bunch of them coming out too. Stripe just released something this weekend, which I didn't cover or repost on X, but they talk a lot about stablecoin in there. It's worth a listen. It's worth a look. And they're not mentioning euro-backed stablecoins or gold, but it's US dollar stablecoins. Stablecoin volume has grown immensely. And as the stablecoin ecosystem is built out and as regulation provides pure guidelines and guardrails for especially stablecoin, and there's some of that in like the Basel III endgame addendum, I can't remember what it's called. Banks are going to get on board. It's going to be very meaningful for margins. Alex Chris talked about this in the interview I had with him, just dropping that. And some of those margin savings, it's going to be good for businesses interacting with each other, but it's also going to be good for consumers because some of that competition and some of the savings is passed on to consumers. And it spreads the amount of people that are actually using and able to use the dollar in a very efficient way, which stablecoins frankly are. Bitcoin itself, it's kind of more neutral-ish to crypto, or not the dollar as a whole.
Let me pull this down and throw up your screen because we have a ton of questions that I have like 15 bookmarked. So I want to get through, the main thing, and then we can just focus on the questions. Does that sound good?
Yeah. So this is from the great Matsby, and I retweeted him. He mentioned, his post says, this is not how bull markets end. And there's a lot you can go into this, but usually what you have, so this was, for context, like 3 days ago, 2 days ago, something like that. Usually the Bitcoin cycle has a lot of features. It will go through a crypto winter. It absolutely will. Maybe we'll talk about in just a second, Tevis, your thoughts on whether the strategic reserve actually prolongs crypto winter from coming, or when you think that might be the case. I'm guessing Q3 is when it hits. And I haven't thought enough about whether it prolongs, but you usually have a couple of things happen. So first is you have a blow off the top for the actual value of Bitcoin. And yes, it went up here, but this is not a blow off the top moment, like it was hammered immediately down here. And then you also have typically a divergence from Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is basically how much is the market cap of Bitcoin versus all the other cryptos. Bitcoin dominance over the cycle tends to increase, though there are some ups and downs. And then you also have those incredibly risky meme coins and altcoins, usually pumping as Bitcoin dominance descends, followed by the end of the cycle. Now, every single time there are some different features, but I don't think that there's been a single cycle when those all have not happened. And they really haven't happened meaningfully yet in this cycle. So I was, retweeting the great Matsby because I'm like, hey, he's absolutely right. This is not how it normally ends. People were talking about like Bitcoin going on the 60, 50, 40, 0. It's not going to happen. All right. So what are your thoughts, Tevis? Does this, what do you think about where we are in the cycle? And does the strategic reserve specifically elongate the cycle in your mind?
I found it interesting because the predominant conversation is around altcoin season, and that sort of is a phase that comes after the Bitcoin top. And if we haven't reached the Bitcoin top yet, then that could be very bullish, very exciting. It could just be a retracement back to form a higher low and then keep on the same uptrend. But I think we'll have to see, right? Like, we need more information because this was, in my mind, the first layer of a sell the news type of like event, or something that has been expected from the market for a while. And now we finally got it through an executive order, right? You still have to, like, I would imagine you would still have to have legislation passing around this and it being implemented, and we have to get the rules of the game as to how this is going to be managed. Is the Federal Reserve going to play a role? Is the Treasury going to play a role? Like, what role is the president or Congress going to play in this? And I know somebody also asked around that, but those are still pieces yet to be defined. My guess is going to be the Federal Reserve. But my point is, the moment we get more information flushed out and the moment we start seeing those initial purchases in that strategic reserve, that I think has the opportunity to really have a prolonged rally into new highs. But right now it's almost as though, this is just people are buying for that anticipation of the more details that are going to be coming soon, which I would expect are going to be coming on Friday.
Yeah, no, well, I guess we'll get into questions, but in just a moment, because there's a question of, a lot of really actually good questions, some that I had not thought of. And so if I'm not sure, I'll just say that. Yeah, for me, I don't know that this elongates the cycle. Like the weird thing this time is we hit an all-time high before halving, which had not happened before previously. And I think a lot of that was the institutional adoption, institutional volume, Michael Saylor as well. And we have more of that. And so I think as we continue to have more and more institutions piling in, the United States government as an institution as well, there's going to be more stability, less volatility in Bitcoin's price. Speaking of volatility, Matt Money, how you doing?
Matty Money.
Gentlemen, appreciate as always being involved in the fundamentals of investing and Hot Roy podcast.
That's exactly what it's called, the Hot Roy podcast.
So, what are your thoughts, Matt? With you, I assume saw the news already with Strategic Reserve announced, and of course the crypto symposium this Friday. Is it Friday?
Didn't see the symposium, but I thought this was inevitable. I thought Trump campaigned a little bit upon this, so I'm not surprised to see that this is coming through. I would just say inevitable, right? I think that this is something that should have happened at some point throughout history over the past, I guess it's close to 13 years, I guess, since, or maybe it's, let me think, I'm not good with math, you guys know that. About 15 years since Bitcoin has really been public. Obviously it went started in like 2008, 2010 timeframe, but over the past 15 years, definitely something that should have been kind of started. I think that, as that people already know, the United States has a significant amount of Bitcoin on its balance sheet that they've taken from criminals in the past. And I knew that, in my opinion, the thought process behind a pullback recently into dipping it actually into the 70s at one point, didn't take advantage of it in the 70s, but I did it in the 80s. Buying more Bitcoin, to me, with the institutional buyers, you're having people in the Middle East, not people actually, but governments in the Middle East and kingdoms in the Middle East acquire Bitcoin for their balance sheets. It's inevitable at this point. I agree with a lot what you guys have said. Unfortunately, I've only caught the last 5 minutes or so. So happy that you guys are on doing a Sunday edition, a Bootleg Weekly. But last thing I'll say is we're not done, in my opinion. I still think I'm with you, Roy. I think we have another quarter or two before we actually start to see some crypto winter. We haven't seen the peak. I believe that we'll hit over 150,000. Some say that we'll hit over 220,000 just based off the rainbow chart. We'll see. It's the longer it goes, the lower my trajectory is in peaking out. But to me, I'm fairly confident that we will hit over 150,000 at some point before the cycle ends.
Okay.
And there's a lot of indicators that you guys have stated as well that we haven't peaked out as of yet. Hopefully that's my interpretation of what you guys have said is correct there. But I'm bullish. I put 2% of every dollar that I make in my 9 to 5 into buying more Bitcoin, and I'll continue to do so. I believe, not necessarily the 13 million that Michael Saylor says is correct, but I do recognize that eventually it'll be worth over $1 million per coin personally. And so with that, I'm trying to get as much as I can, but also limit my risk, right? 2%, if I miss 2% of my salary, that I'm doing something wrong, right? So my hope is I have a decent amount already, I guess, so from a normal standard that people might say. Most people try to get to a point where they have a Bitcoin, but I'm trying to get to the next hurdle above that.
It's also a little bit different for you and your financial position, Matt, because you're already well diversified across equities and property. And so it's fine if you want to, for a lot of people, I think crypto in general is the moonshot type of investment. And that's largely been proven out over the last decade because it has outperformed equities as a whole. And I do think that, and just coming back to this theory of why the strategic reserve is an important first step in that $1 million target over the next 10 years, is because of the game theory that it triggers. It triggers a series of dominoes that if the US starts to get into Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana and Cardano as a strategic national reserve, a lot of the countries will be forced to immediately buy in or risk being priced out altogether and never owning a slice of that pie. Because all the fiat is denominated in US dollars as a reserve currency, then it sort of puts a ticking time bomb or a clock running down for every other country to get in the game or be left out. And that's like China, Russia, Brazil, all the BRICS essentially are the first players around that. So it adds a layer of stability. And then it also brings in a lot of institutional money. And we've seen BlackRock and, all of these ETFs now forming up. And this is just another layer on top of that, which is, governments as a whole. And that will really put a solid floor on where we see Bitcoin, because you're getting legitimacy. It's one of the only things that the bigger it gets, the more safe it is.
So maybe let's dig into some questions, and we all three can answer those, because I know, Tevis, you have a lot of them. Thanks for joining us, by the way, Matt.
No, I always joke around, but I always love talking to you guys. You guys are friends, in my opinion.
And I want you to know, I didn't take, I'm not like Matt Money that's made of money and I can do 2% of my income. Just, I've got a family. So, but no, I ended up basically doing what your financial advice indicated, which was buy a certain allotment of Bitcoin every week. Like honestly, that's the only crypto that I bought other than just swing trades over the last year and a half or so. And I've just started a DCA, I think actually late last year. But
we can talk about more over lunch. It'll be good.
All right. Yeah, I am so freaking jealous that you guys can grab lunch. All I have is dates with Tanner. All right. First question. How much money do you think the U.S. pumps into this, and when will this actually take place? So I think we talked a little bit about the when part. I think the how much is also interesting. Maddie, you want to start?
There's a lot of influx that people could put into this, right? Do you do what I'm doing, add 2% of whatever comes in terms of taxes into this? Do you take one of the things that I was talking about with some people the other day actually is the United States, believe it or not, is, you might not think of them that as an oil producer, but throughout all the federal lands across the United States, the government gets about 12.5 to 3/16, which is 18.75% of every barrel that's made in cash. So basically the producers produce that, and because it's on federal land, whether it's in the Gulf of Mexico or other lands, I'm not so much sure as the onshore part, but I deal pretty regularly with the Gulf of America assets that we have in our portfolio, but I'll leave that there.
Gulf of America.
Gulf of America,
gets
man.
Me every time.
Gets me every time too. Yeah, but that literally puts them as one of the largest oil producers in the Gulf of America. And so if you take that for thinking, oh my God, these oil companies make so much money, well, they could siphon something like that off and put it into either what I was thinking, the sovereign wealth fund, which is something that's been established, or something like this, which is this crypto fund. So that could be in the order of billions of dollars a year. I mean, to put it in perspective, I don't know exactly how much the U.S. government makes just strictly from the Gulf of America, but they're probably making about 250 to 300,000 barrels a day of oil equivalent, which is comparable to some of the super major oil companies in the Gulf of America that are making right now. So if you think about,
for excuses to say Gulf of America, dude.
Hey man, it's pretty funny, but at the same time, it's like I've been talking in this language for a couple weeks now, because I talk about the Gulf of America all the time in my day-to-day job. So, but it is still kind of funny when I talk with my European friends in the company. They always chuckle.
Favorite Gulf of Bucky's.
That's right. Bucky's is where it's at. Yeah, I think Matt's right on the money, pun intended. That I don't think it's just going to be strategic reserve so that they hold on to the Ethereum and the Bitcoin that they've impounded. I don't know that they have a meaningful stockpile of like any of the cryptocurrencies, and I know that we'll talk about it in a moment, because one of the questions is about that, whether it should just be Bitcoin or these other cryptocurrencies. But they'll definitely be allocating a certain amount of tax receipts to it. Now, should it be like incredibly aggressive? No, but I mean, billions of dollars for the United States at least is relatively small. It's I think they'll probably be buying less than Michael Saylor, but that's because that guy's a madman. So
honestly, like, I thought it was pretty fucking risky to tweet out "sell your kidney to buy Bitcoin" when we were in the retracement, and now he looks like a genius because Bitcoin just pumped immediately after. And I was like, ooh man, like I got really weird grifter vibes. But I guess it worked out for MicroStrategy. So
I didn't get that feeling. I thought that as conviction, and I agreed with him personally. Would I go to the extreme of selling a kidney? I don't think anybody would want my kidney, but maybe somebody out there is better off than I am, or worse off than I am, and would like it. But yeah, I agreed with him personally. If I had a lot of excess cash, unfortunately, if this were next month, when I have a little bit more influx of cash. You guys know I'm purchasing another property right now, so I don't have as much flush cash as I normally am. But yeah, if this were next month, I'd hopefully it stays down in the 90s. So I'd love to buy a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll just keep DCAing it. It's the easiest thing.
So. I think in terms of the money, hold on, where was that? How much money? In terms of the money, I think it's a factor of two things. Number one is what have they already collected that they haven't sold out? Because I know on his way out, Biden was selling, or that administration was selling a lot of these crypto assets that they had sequestered over the years, which, I mean, obviously is not a good look. And then it's a factor of how much new funds are they going to put into this? And also, what is going to be the distribution in that allocation? Because now the National Reserve is not just Bitcoin. It's across Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Are they going to distribute to those evenly or not? But overall, I think if they do have a recurring cadence of putting in money, like I saw the comment that I put up where somebody was saying, just the percentage of all the stuff saved by Doge, that's really going to be really exciting for everybody who currently holds crypto, because all of a sudden you're going to have consistent buying pressure. And one thing that we know about crypto is that it has a fixed supply. And so you add consistent buying pressure and a fixed supply, there's only one direction that it can really go. So again, I think a lot of that stuff, I hope a lot of that stuff will be uncovered on Friday during that event.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Next question. Right. I want to take this to Roy. Robinhood is going to be benefiting off of this because of their association with crypto. Thoughts, Roy?
It benefits in three ways. First, there's a correlation in the market, whether they did anything with Bitcoin or not. When Bitcoin pumps, it tends to pump. When it drops, it'll drop some, but not a lot. Second, crypto is a meaningful part of the Robinhood ecosystem as far as revenue. It's one of the reasons why they put up over 100% year-over-year revenue growth in Q1, which is insane. But a large part of that was crypto growth. It exploded. We already know January's numbers are very good for crypto. They're not like they were in Q4, but they're still solid. This, February, probably a little bit weaker. March, I'm guessing, is not going to be very weak at all. So very good for Bitcoin not Bitcoin, Robinhood on that. Third, they are in the process of acquiring Bitstamp. Bitstamp, of course, has like over 100 cryptos. But the biggest thing that Bitstamp is really interesting for me is, well, partly they're leveraging that to go into further markets, expanding overseas. But the other side of that is they also have a institutional product. We talked about it, and I won't touch on it too much here. But as they pave clear regulation, as banks get involved, as other institutions get involved, Robinhood can help them basically host products. I think, frankly, better than anybody, even better than SoFi, although they do have a Galileo product. Coinbase also will be a competitor there. But yeah, it's just fundamentally and just through correlation, it's really, really good for Robinhood. I ended up actually selling out of all my swings, including my crypto miners. I'm not upset. The reason why I'm not upset is I bought a whole bunch of vertical spreads on Robinhood on the stock. So
nice.
And that's already up like 30-something% before whatever this does. So feels pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have a green day on Monday. I added some more Hood, and Kelly, if she's in the chat, shout out to Kelly, who made me buy some more Robinhood on Friday. So that's going to work out, I think. All right, Sagig asks, won't other countries consider swapping dollar reserves for crypto? How does this make America great again? Matt, you want to take that?
Specifically around how buying crypto will make America great again?
No, other countries swapping dollar reserves for crypto.
Good question.
As in they go out of fiat and go into crypto themselves. Because that's how I'm understanding it. If other countries have their own reserves in USD and they want to front run that move, or at least they want to, follow the US's lead, then they would swap the USD and go into crypto themselves. That's, I think, how I'm interpreting it.
I think it all depends on how much of the crypto sphere that the United States owns, right? I think you're right. I think some people might view that as a negative lens of getting out of the US dollar. But I think also it can help enable trade and help people have more access to being able to purchase American goods. Believe it or not, we do actually have a lot of the GDP growth around the world. And a lot of, if you look at the SP 500, 30 to 40% of the volume and revenue is generated from ex-US countries. So in that respect, if you just have the ability to have a more liquid currency, you'll have the ability to spend more, and with that you'll be able to likely benefit the United States. A prime example of this, and I was kind of in this realm about 6 years ago, where I was kind of like, I don't understand why Bitcoin is important. If you're saying this and you live in Canada and the United States, you haven't truly seen the opportunity that Bitcoin has for international countries. I used to live in Trinidad and Tobago for work, and the ability for people to import utilizing the Trinidadian currency, trying to buy stuff off of Amazon using Trinidadian currency was non-existent. So what you'd have to do is go to the local bank, to which they have very limited United States dollar supply, and be able to use that. So think now, if you would have Bitcoin, the ability for you to exchange in and out of, say, US dollar, or for you to even just buy something in Bitcoin and have that now shipped to you, you're not waiting months anymore for products that you could be waiting days or weeks for. And I think that that's going to enable just more consistent flow of cash and the economy around the world. I think we a lot of times look at things through a very American or Canadian lens from how we use money. But once, like you stated, we are very flush with respect to liquidity here in the United States. Most countries are not.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out for El Salvador, right? And that's a case study for the rest of the world as to the fact that this can be very successful, not only as a store of value, but as a medium of exchange.
Yeah, and I think Eddie's comment's good too, that they'll adopt stable coins, which is tokenized dollars. So it's like Bitcoin itself, I think, is more neutral, against the dollar. I don't think it's basically gold is the way to think of it. And gold is rarely used to actually buy things. Instead, it holds value. It's a store of value versus like stable coins, like that's actual currency and it's tied to a U.S. currency. And as the acceptance, understanding, and digital payment rails are paved out, I don't see really any other asset other than dollar-backed stablecoin like being commonplace at all. Like that's actually going to elongate the dominance of the dollar.
So a couple of questions around this being as a bullish catalyst around the market as a whole. Why? Roy, you can go first, but I think we're all going to have the same answer.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So one is, and this is probably the weakest piece of it, Bitcoin is a risk-on asset. And so when it typically is pumping, then the market is in risk-on mode. When it is dropping rapidly, like it has over the last couple of weeks, it's risk-off. That tends to hit equities even more so. You almost can think of Bitcoin as TQQQ as far as like how volatile that move is. That's basically it. There's a correlation there to the NASDAQ, and there's a reason for that. So I think that part of the reason why is like this move is more than I would expect if the market was still on that risk-off mentality. We had a very green Friday. I didn't know if that would continue this Monday or not. Monday tends to set the tone for the week, and I think that this certainly will. Plus, there's a lot of assets that are tied to Bitcoin, and I think that they'll do very well. And it's not just about the strategic reserve. It's the crypto summit that's happening on Friday as well. It's very, very important. I mean, like, honestly, if you're not convinced on like stablecoin and crypto, like Bitcoin, fine, whatever. Read the earnings transcripts of any major bank. Read that it's not an earnings transcript because they're not a public company, but read what Stripe put out over this weekend. Read what or listen to what PayPal is saying about. There's just so many companies and fintechs, especially, and banks and financial institutions that are insanely thrilled about the shift in mentality towards crypto, especially stablecoins. Stablecoin is incredibly meaningful for consumers, yes, but especially fintech institutions that can leverage it.
Yeah, it's going to be really bullish for the miners as well because they own a bunch of Bitcoin as their main asset holding, which is just their bags are getting pumped as well. Futures are going to open in a couple of hours, so we're going to see how the whole market as a collective is taking this news, which is going to be, I mean, my guess is very green, but the miners in general, I think, are going to have a very good day as well because they have direct exposure. Okay.
And I just bought a little bit Bitcoin that my fill came through.
There you go.
You just did right now?
Yeah, it's like I'm feeling like it's basically my normal DCA amount, so I'm just doing double DCA.
I knew this podcast was good for one thing. And then, yeah, so this answers partially I'm Beneficial's question. Crypto proxies, crypto exposed stocks, all of this, it's green for all of them. It's green for Robinhood, it's green for Mara, it's green for Riot, CleanSpark. It's green for all of the Bitcoin ETFs out there. So it is the tide that raises all boats. Next major level of support. Any technical analysis? Yes, no. I think we might have hit it, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm not a technical guy, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's unlikely. So the one thing that is held true every single crypto cycle, we'll see if it's different this time because there are a few different features, is Bitcoin has never retraced to its pre-halving all-time high. No, that's not accurate. Pre-election all-time high. So 108,
basically.
Yeah.
That's where it peaked. It topped at 108 and then it retraced.
I mean, we could see 70s again. And at some point, crypto winter will hit in. The longer that's staved off, I think the less that will go down. Unless depends on what that blow off the top moment is. Like if we went from, let's say hypothetically, over the next 2 weeks from here to like 190,000, it's going to come down fast and hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in crypto winter, we'll absolutely see 70 again. I just don't think that we're going to see it if this rally continues off the back of this news.
I saw a couple of questions on this, and I'm sure one of those you have starred is, should this be Bitcoin only as far as this reserve? What do you think, Maddie?
I think initially, yes.
Like beyond what they already have for Ethereum, just only buy Bitcoin?
I just, at the moment, and I've had a good conversation with a couple people that are also people that I talk with here in Houston that are very much in the crypto space as well. Bitcoin at the moment, is to me probably the most set up. It's the eldest of the opportunities, and I think it gives a lot of credit if you're to introduce some of these other things in here, like Ripple and things like that are currently undergoing SEC scrutiny and suing and haven't necessarily been as fully established yet, right? So I don't know. I personally think that it should be strictly Bitcoin at the moment and then extend throughout time. And I think it should align closely with how the regulatory body of the United States, meaning the SEC, feels. So I think they've allowed now Ethereum ETFs. And so they've said that that's okay. So maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum should be okay. But I think until it aligns with the SEC and maybe other countries around the world, I think it should be strictly limited to those two. So I'm kind of in between. While I agree with a Bitcoin reserve, not necessarily agree 100% with a crypto reserve, because I think it gives legitimacy to, let's just say, all of cryptocurrency, which to me, that's like giving, how do I say this? That's like giving a random country potentially legitimacy for their currency, right? How is it actually fully backed? Do we know everything about it? Is it truly a currency, right? Should it be fully recognized? That anybody can create a cryptocurrency to help move currencies worldwide or between one place to another and try to hide it from other folks. So to me, I think a Bitcoin reserve and maybe an Ethereum reserve is okay. But until you understand fully and go through the vetting process of the Securities Exchange Commission and other things, it should be limited to just those two, maybe.
I think the easy answer there is that Bitcoin is inherently decentralized, like it doesn't have a central authority, and that has a fixed supply. And if you really wanted to diversify into a harder currency, that's one of the key tenets that that currency needs to have. Because by going into like Solana, let's say, or these other coins that they're decentralized, but they're really not, they have like a founding team and they have all of these people still very much in the, like Cardano has Charles, and Solana has like a full team out of Silicon Valley, basically. That's the piece that I'm like, okay, well, you know, why, like, you're not really going into decentralized commodity like gold. You're essentially investing into something, a structure more similar to a company like in the S&P 500. And that's the thing that I take issue with. Like, I understand wanting to promote US cryptos because it's a US strategic reserve. But at the same time, there's no real assurances that you won't get the same problems if, you know, the people behind one of these coins want to do something weird with the actual supply, or manipulate it in some way, or, you know, still have a hand in messing with a status as a commodity. Because with Bitcoin, like, there's two benefits, right? One is the first mover advantage because it's the most common name in crypto. But the second is the fact that nobody knows who Satoshi is. Satoshi hasn't made any moves in years, I presume dead. I mean, that has that provides a cushion of safety with regards to the commodity status around Bitcoin, because it doesn't have an owner, whereas all of these other ones have a founding team.
Yeah, I'm not quite where Matt is, where he thinks it should be, but it makes sense. It's logical sense, you know, that where you provide a clear regulatory approval, you know, that's fine. Like Solana, decentralization, I don't think it matters significantly here. Solana is like way less decentralized than they say. Cardano is a lot more so. But yeah, I think that at minimum, Bitcoin should be 90% of what they're purchasing, maybe 95%. And I say that as a guy that owns, of course, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano. But that should definitely be the focus. It shouldn't be like, hey, let's give equal part to each of these, equal weighting, mostly Bitcoin. And if they want to have like a little bit of speculation on the others, you know, like let's say 95% Bitcoin and 1% these other 5 or 6 other names, like not in total, obviously, then that's fine. You know, it does need to be mostly Bitcoin at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, I got distracted. Let's see what else we want to throw up here. Roy, what doubles first, PayPal or Bitcoin?
I actually think PayPal. It's ridiculously undervalued. RSI is way undersold, way oversold rather, and it's primed for a bounce. They have a lot of good things that they're working on. I think Bitcoin, like it just depends on where you think that Bitcoin will top this cycle. So from here, you're looking at you know, almost 190,000 for the top for a double. I don't think it does that before crypto winter. I just don't think it does. So basically, then you're saying, okay, over the next 2.5 years, which doubles first? If you give PayPal 2.5 years, it's going to double. It'll double before then. So PayPal easy.
Interesting. Maddie, do you also think PayPal doubles before Bitcoin does?
I defer that to Roy. Yeah. No offense, I'm just not well versed on PayPal, and while I've hoped the best for anybody within it, I think that the reason why folks are why people are getting into it, the cheap valuation, the buybacks, I think that those were all really good. I just haven't really had the opportunity to form a firm thesis on it, so unfortunately, I can't really answer the question.
Yeah, it's just a question of where you think that Bitcoin will top this cycle, and I'm curious, Matt. You said some tops. Do you have a top?
A top, I mean, I'm confident it'll go over 150. Personally, 150,000.
Yeah.
Where I think it'll actually top is probably somewhere between 180 and 200. I think this time is a little bit different. I think what you're starting to see is the shallowing of the peaks and troughs as we get more liquidity in it, which I think is a good thing. So to me, I wouldn't be surprised if we only go up about 3x comparatively to where we've been in the past. I think sometimes people expect 6 to 10x compared to in the previous high to the next high. I think that it's going to get shallower, and then will we actually go below our 60,000 like next time? I don't necessarily know. So anyway, long story short, I think we're at a 3x from here within the next couple, not 3x, I guess, close to a 2x from here within the next 6 months. And I think by the time we get into the late fourth quarter, we'll definitely be within crypto winter.
Yeah. If the question was like, which does maybe not a double, but goes up like 70% first, Bitcoin. Like that's pretty easy. It just I don't know that we get as high of a peak as a double from here for Bitcoin. So Tevis, what about you? Where do you see it topping? And then that'll tell you which will come first. Probably.
I could see it topping lower than you guys, 135, 145 ish.
Sure.
I wouldn't be surprised around that. So, and I don't know where PayPal is going, dude. Like PayPal can go much lower, but it has an artificial floor because the leadership team is buying back so much stock. So
yeah, it's hard to go much lower from here. It can always go lower in the short term, but over a couple of years, like no.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question. Do we get on a dip on HIMS tomorrow? I think if the market is green, HIMS is going to be hella green, guys.
Could get a dip because of that lawsuit.
Right, the Novo Nordisk lawsuit. Is this bullish for SoFi? I think, we need SoFi to get back to crypto ASAP. So I do think that having a formal strategic national reserve are going to put pressure on regulators to loosen up the restrictions for banks and crypto, which will ultimately help SoFi. So I think, if anything, it's something that's spurring it forward. Okay. Yeah. So we answered this one. Accelerates the crypto platform. They're blocked by regulation right now. So when regulators get their shit together, then SoFi can get moving. Let's see. What other questions do we have here? Matt, are you doing anything as a result of this move, or just DCAing through? Like, are you doing any MicroStrategy calls or anything Matt money related?
I've been selling cash secured puts on MicroStrategy for quite some time, and they were around the 285 to 300 range. Not a lot, because obviously each contract is worth $28,000 to $30,000. But I've done really well with those, and I'm very confident that when I personally think that there will be a peak, I'll probably stop writing those cash secured puts. I'll probably slowly tail it up. I've also been consistently writing covered calls on my Bitcoin ETFs. I do a firm buy between actual physical crypto and ETFs, and I have a reason. We can get into that if you guys so wish. But what I'll do is any profit that I make from my covered calls on Bitcoin, I'll just rebuy more Bitcoin ETFs to continue to grow that position, hopefully over time as well. So with that, that's really it. Just the dollar cost averaging, and then if I do have extra money at the end of the month, maybe I'll throw 500 or 1,000 here or there. Like I said, really just trying to get about double, maybe 3 times as much Bitcoin as I have before I guess stop. By the time I anticipate I'll get to the 2 to 3 times X amount of actual Bitcoin, like the value, not the value of the Bitcoin compared to the US dollar, but the actual amount of Bitcoin, like Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin thing. I think the valuation of it will be huge, and the hope will be to leverage against it.
Right. Yes. Just answering Brittany's question. SAB 121 was overturned in January, but keep in mind, as relates to SoFi, they do have multiple regulatory bodies that affect whether they can be in crypto or not. They have SEC, they have OCC, they have a whole bunch of different hurdles to jump through. That's not only SAB 121 related. So something to keep in mind, SAB 121 is a good first step, but it's definitely not enough as pertains to SoFi. Roy?
Yeah, I just want to throw the price up there. I've said this elsewhere. I have a video on this too. I still think that it's they'll give enough regulatory clarity that SoFi and other players can jump in either late this year or early next year. So we're a little ways away from that. But yeah, this is good for SoFi ultimately, not just the reserve itself, but that keeps and garners interest, but also that summit that they have for crypto. And just the entire regulatory process and change. Like Vlad even had an interview this last week with Jim Cramer where he talked about just how much of a different environment it is right now versus previously with the SEC. It was SEC stood for Stop Everything Crypto, and they really seemed like that was their mentality, to like slow it down and stop it and issue fines, issue no real kind of guidance or regulatory clarity. They would instead issue some things that were very ambiguous and then just fine everybody. And it's like, that's not okay. That's not any way to actually build a crypto ecosystem. And I think it's hugely important that the United States takes the lead here. So this is good.
I want to throw up, I'm just going to pull this down. I want to throw up this comment. Does anyone think this is just encouraging crime and scams? And I was sort of giggling with myself, imagining if the US Strategic Reserve started pumping Trump coin and Melania coin and just started buying up Donnie's bags. What do you guys think? Ever since Gensler was out, it's been kind of like a shit show from a regulatory lens.
Yeah, I think that you could argue that the Trump coin itself, Melania coin, like that certainly does. I didn't like that at all. I thought that was a horrible thing. Missed opportunity, not in favor. If people are watching, made money on it, great, good for you. That should never have been done. This, especially with the asset classes that they've mentioned, especially if it's mostly Bitcoin, I don't think it does at all. No.
Roy looking like an elected official. Can we have a Tevis coin? Definitely not. Whenever a Tevis coin comes out, I'm going to rug all of you. So we're not having that. But at what point is common sense regulation not a bad thing? That's a fair question, right? Because you need some type of regulatory authority if you're going to be entering this on a country level. Right? Because by doing it, you're essentially endorsing this type of action. You're going to set the stage for a lot more ETFs. And Roy, I know you have to bounce in a couple of minutes, so maybe you get your take in, and then we can wrap.
Yeah, that's actually necessary. That's actually what, if they do this right, and I think that they will, it is not just about averting the law and drugs and crime and all that stuff, but providing regulations so that legitimate people and institutions can get into the crypto as far as an ecosystem. And there's a lot of large institutions, banks, certainly, fintech, certainly as well, that have been waiting on this for a long, long time. So it's a great shift, not just about the strategic reserve. It's just one of many pieces that shows the shift in thinking towards crypto and crypto assets. But yeah, it's important.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard from a Forbes recognized technology blogger, the man who interviewed PayPal's CEO earlier this week, Roy, Mr. Crossroads. He will be back on Monday for a regularly scheduled Bootleg Weekly. Are we doing that at 8, Roy, or 7? Whatever. It'll be
whatever our normal time is, which we kind of skipped all over the place. I think it's 8 Eastern time, 7. No, I'll have to double check. We'll make sure you guys know. So
we will let you guys know. And now I want to spend about 10 to 15 minutes grilling Matt Money on his latest buys and sells. Thanks, Roy, for being here.
Love you, Roy. Looking forward to later this week.
Looking forward to it. Bye.
Yeah, man. You wish you could get lunch with me, huh? Yeah. Is that what you want?
I am so jealous. I am so jealous.
Roy's a good guy, man. I really enjoy meeting up with him. He's really smart.
I don't know if Tanner's in the chat, and I hope he is, but I would much rather get lunch with you and Roy than go to a Raptors game with Tanner, because he is ungrateful and he airs out our whole date to the world. He talked about it on Friday, and we had like 300 people watching. He's like, "Tavis took me on a date." I'm like, "Dude, stop."
I mean, I can tell people about how you're feeding me grapes underneath the cabanas in Mexico.
Shut the fuck up.
That never happened, but we did get a cabana. That was, dude.
The
relaxation. I missed that. I need to get on it, and I need to get my passport up, and we need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, dude, we got to go on vacation soon.
Yeah, soon enough.
But what are you still in SMCI? What's your biggest trade?
So I think a lot of people are probably laughing like, ha ha ha, Matt's an idiot. So I'm just looking at the chart. I didn't get out at the exact peak, but I did get out Thursday before they made the announcement. And I'm just looking at the chart and I'm looking at the graphic. I got out on the 20th of March. Sorry, hold on. No, it coincides. Okay. 20th of February. So the peak for SMCI, which I wish I got out on, was the 19th, so the day before. And then I started to get a feeling like it was a little bit more of like a sell the news event. So I wrote it. I got in a little bit too early. If anybody wants to know the whole story of SMCI, it felt like it was just too good to be true with respect to the fact that it was dipping so low in terms of its market cap valuation. I think at one point it got to like 12 or 13 billion dollars in terms of market cap, maybe slightly more than that. But regardless, the magnitude is there, and just with how vital the company was, it just didn't make sense that it would really just fall off the face of the earth, or that they wouldn't get what they need done to be able to remain on the NASDAQ. And so when it was about $31, $32 a share at the end of January, it's like January 22nd through the 24th, I was like, you know what? So I bought. It unfortunately made me second guess, because the next week it actually dipped from like 34 down to like $26.80, $27. And so I was like, holy crap, did I just, throw 20 grand at this bet that I'm going to lose money on? And luckily it started since then to make the announcement that they were going to actually get to the point where they had the 10K. And then with the fourth quarter announcement, things continued. And at the same time, I was like, you know what? This was about the $65 to $65 range was about where I thought we would end up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm not going to get greedy, So I took the majority of my capital off, and on that, was it then?
You still made a good amount of money on the SMCI though. Like you made a ton of money on that trade.
Yeah, a good amount. And that's not normally who I am. And I saw some people, chiming in on the chat, like, am I still buying X, Y, and Z? For anybody that doesn't really know what I do, I'd rather be early in a company than late. And so things like VG, things like Rocket Lab, things like I'm very often underwater. Same thing with SoFi, to be honest. Very often underwater on those things way before I make money. And so what I'd rather do is find a really good company that might be trading at a slightly overvalued valuation or a fair valuation and buy it early. And knowing that it could potentially go down, that's fine with me, and hold on to it and continue to add over time. And so I think that there's a lot of great companies out there that follow this model. I think VG, obviously, with it just being a recent IPO, not a lot of information out there. For those people that don't know, Venture Global is an LNG company or LNG operator. They basically have now 2 facilities up and running, of which only one has really seen any real term financials when they submitted the S1, and they're just ramping up the second facility. So anybody that's looking at VG, Venture Global, and saying, holy crap, Matt, you told people to start buying at 24, that's great. Like, my cost basis now is $18, and I'm continuing to dollar cost average on that. I bought some on Friday on the 28th, and I'll continue to buy some on the 15th. And when I get my bonus on the 15th, I'll probably throw a couple dollars at that as well. But I look at things in a long-term time horizon as to where I think the company's going to go. And so VG is currently a good one. I bought some more next decade as well. There's a lot of information I'd love to tell people about next decade, but I'm holding off for a week or two, probably a couple weeks. based off of that, but some really good information around next decade that just recently released. And Chris Btlg and I have done a couple emergency meetings with respect to the LNG facility. So, people ask me specifically, am I investing in oil and gas? And the answer is mostly no, other than stock-based compensation. With the because everyone, if you don't know, I work in oil and gas. With the exception of LNG, I think LNG right now is actually cheap. It will continue to get better. Oil, I still think there's another leg down, just based on the world is very flush with oil at the moment. For those people that aren't really paying attention. But yeah, that's really it right now. Somebody's asking about Cooler. Don't know much about that. I do have a short-term trade on Intuitive Machines, which is going to have a lunar lander hit the moon later this week.
Yeah, I mean, lots of trades out there. Are you looking into HIMS at all, or actually? So
that's a good question. I would love to pick your brain about that.
Definitely go for it. Yeah, I know a lot of my audience here are HIMS investors, and they made money on HIMS. And hey, man, I'll talk about HIMS every opportunity I get. Sorry,
I got distracted. We both got distracted at the same time.
I'm just finishing up a text. But that's very, very cool. So yeah, we can either talk about one of two things. Number one, we can talk about HIMS, or number two, we can talk about the fact that Rocket Lab is down quite a bit, and I want to get your thoughts there because I've been seeing a lot of people now entering Rocket Lab in the high teens where they weren't making a peep in the low 20s.
For sure.
Yeah, rare big team Matt Money collab. I bought more HIMS. Thank you, Tevis. Matt's having a Celsius. Yeah, buying Celsius. Buying Celsius is my YouTube sugar daddy. He always donates to me every time I drink this shit. So he's also what's called an enabler, Matt. Okay, what do you want to talk about?
There's a lot of different things. I do want to make this shorter, so if you want to prioritize, that's fine. I have some time. I don't have a timetable, but I don't have hours. If that's what your thoughts are.
Me either. I would love to maybe wrap up in, what do you think, 15 minutes ish?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cool.
I'll try to be succinct. I know I can go on tangents.
You absolutely can. And I say that with love. All right, so let's start with Rocket Lab and we'll finish off with HIMS.
Okay, Rocket Lab. So what's the question around Rocket Lab?
So why'd they fall? If somebody didn't have a position, what is the rationale that you could convince them? And by somebody, I mean me, who didn't buy at $4.
What I told you to a year ago. Yeah,
I know it's brutal. Yeah, so just give it.
Am I a moderator on your channel?
You absolutely are.
So some self-promotion. I just released my Rocket Lab article just the other day. I think it was on Friday. So for anybody that's curious and has Seeking Alpha, please go ahead and take an opportunity to read that. I'm trying to grow my Seeking Alpha following to about 4,000 by the end of the year. So we'll see if it gets to it. So appreciate anybody that has that. So long story short, for anybody that doesn't know, Rocket Lab is a company that has launched about 60 small launch vehicles into the Earth's atmosphere / orbit over the past 7 years. So they've done pretty well with respect to that. And they're probably one of the most premier satellite creators or component makers in the business. So for anybody that heard about the moon landing with Firefly yesterday, Rocket Lab actually helped with the software, solar panels, many of the other criteria that helped be able to enable that moon landing. And it's also doing so for many other companies as well. So I think, when we hear Rocket Lab, I think a lot of people think it's strictly launching things into space. But about 70% of the revenue comes from satellite systems and creating satellites. The things like the Global Star contract with Apple, things like the Space Development Agency, etc. They're also on the back of that, which is actually getting close towards profitability, I should say, those two underlying businesses and where they are today, based off the economics that came out and the financial metrics that came out on Thursday when they had their fiscal year 24 fourth quarter report. were favorable. It looked like they were almost cash flow break even. The big piece of Rocket Lab, which we'll end this conversation on, love to hear some pushback, is the medium launch vehicle. And that medium launch vehicle is supposed to compete pretty much head to head with the Falcon 9. Why is this important? Obviously, the Falcon 9 is a monopoly leader at the moment within the space industry, providing around $21,000 per kilogram to orbit if you utilize the average launch capability, or sorry, the average launch capacity, average launch payload that SpaceX has put into space, which is around 3,200 kilograms each for normal payloads that they've sent to space. If you were to use the Neutron rocket, instead of $21,000, it'd be about $16,000 per kilogram. It's about a 20% discount. So not everybody needs to send 20,000 kilograms of things into space, right? You might need something that's slightly smaller. It's also going to be designed to be reusable day one. And so it'll be like the Falcon 9, reusable. And then hopefully will be the first medium to large launch vehicle that has been reusable since day one to land. Of course, people might recognize the Falcon 9 as reusable, but that was retrofitted. Anyway, yes, my main thesis around why I think this $20 valuation on the stock is important. There's about 500 million shares outstanding. It means it's about a $10 to $11 billion market cap organization at the moment. At a minimum, I would say to be able to get anywhere close to where Rocket Lab is, or even getting a rocket into space, you would need about $10 billion worth of funding to be able to get you there. So you're able to purchase a company that is actually generating and will be generating over $1 billion of revenue in 2027, has launched 60 vehicles into space, is probably one of the most important satellite creators of our time. And then coupled with the fact that it'll have a Neutron launch vehicle for about the entry cost of what you would need to be able to get a rocket company off the ground. To put in perspective, Blue Origin, and then I'll stop. To put in perspective, Blue Origin has been investing, or Jeff Bezos has been investing in Blue Origin for 20 odd years or so. In the last several years, he's put $2 billion worth of capital into the business. And they have just launched their 24th New Shepard rocket, which doesn't technically even go into outer space, just breaches the...
Which they also announced the crew. Did you see Lauren Sanchez is going to be a part of that crew? That's mostly space tourism, though, right? Whereas what Rocket Lab is doing is closer to SpaceX, around actually launching payloads into space and having contracts for satellite providers of low Earth orbit vehicles, right?
Yep. And so with that, congratulations to Blue Origin, by the way, on New Glenn. That was absolutely phenomenal. Love to watch it and hope they continue to do extremely well. And with New Glenn, Rocket Lab will be sending satellites to Mars. So that's obviously a partnership, right? We all succeed and are better together. We're not looking for competitiveness in terms of trying to destruct each other, but competitiveness to make things cheaper for us all to go to space. So that's, in my opinion, one thing to get out there. But the fact that you are getting the frugality of spending less than $200 million a year and to get where SpaceX has gone, or sorry, Rocket Lab has gone, compared to where Blue Origin has gone, spending $2 billion, or a magnitude of 10x comparatively to Rocket Lab, shows the capability within Rocket Lab as a company, and the engineers and operators that they have there, and also the frugality of them to be able to make sure that they really get their most bang for buck.
Yeah. Michelle is calling me out for getting all giggly in this chat. I don't know what that's all about.
He's giggly every time he gets around me.
I never get giggly on a live stream, so I don't know what Michelle is saying. And I think June nailed it here, right? Rocket Lab is an end-to-end space company, and one of the biggest value propositions around them is their low market cap, right? Like, they are in a space that doesn't have a lot of competition, and they have a low market cap with a lot of runway to go.
Very true. Yeah, they have potential Department of Defense opportunity as well. So that, I think, is a large. We don't have to dive deep into that, but I think that has a potential to be a $20 to $30 billion business on its own.
Yeah. All right. Shall we jump into HIMS?
Yeah. What are we buying? What am I buying?
You should have been buying.
It looks cheap, man. Just based off of what I know from you, and I'm by no means an expert, but would really love to hear your elevator pitch as to why somebody would be stupid not to. And I also want to hear specifically around that the details as to how GLP-1 in that whole fiasco, which I think led to an exacerbated sell-off in the stock, more than what I think the rest of the growth stocks in the market have received, how that actually can be beneficial. And even without the GLP-1, which I guess is that question now, can him still be an appropriate investment?
Yep. First of all, I like this comment from Elijah, doing the same deal that I did with Kelly, where I bought Hood and she bought Hims. But I think that with regards to GLP-1s, you have to understand the composition breakdown of their product offerings, how that contributes to revenue. GLP-1s for Hims were released around Q2 2024, and in the 2 quarters, they did about 220 million in revenue. But the other thing to keep in mind, Matt, is while GLP-1s are essentially like patented from other companies and only available to compounders like Hims through a shortage, and they're going away now as a result of the FDA decision, you have to keep in mind that they have the oral weight loss solutions, which are never going to be going away. And that oral weight loss solution is one of their fastest revenue growing streams. It reached 100 million in run rate in 7 months. And that is really what they're banking on, because Hims, they have about 10% of their users across weight loss in general. Okay. And like the entire market is making it sound like their entire company is GLP-1 provider. They have a whole bunch of different segments. Only 10% of their users are actually weight loss. And that weight loss is partially GLP-1s, which they'll have to migrate off, and partially oral weight loss, which they can keep and retain. And so that's point number 1. Point number 2 is they're increasing their guidance to 725 million revenue from weight loss in 2025, where in 2024, they only did about 300 million. So they're basically doubling what their revenue expectations is, even though they won't have GLP-1s as a revenue source going forward in 2025. And so that's also very bullish because it speaks to their confidence around ramping up more people into the oral weight loss solutions. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is the fact that they're going to be launching liraglutide at the second half of this year. And liraglutide is a generic, non-specialized offering where that's never going to be on shortage. It's never going to be going away. Essentially, they're always going to have liraglutide. It's kind of a weaker solution. Like it's a daily injection, it's as opposed to a weekly injection. It's not a great value offering. GLP-1 is a weekly injection right now for semaglutide. And so my point is they're always going to be having weight loss offerings in the market, even though they can't do compounded semaglutide, but they can do it on a case-by-case basis. So it won't entirely go away. But right now, a lot of the analysts on the street are essentially not believing the guidance that Hims is providing around the weight loss segment expectations. They're calling bullshit on Hims to essentially do double the revenue this year without GLP-1s. But I think that, so Hims can continue to compound GLP-1s until the end of May, which is when the FDA ruled that they have to essentially ramp off. And I think for Q1 until the end of May, they can essentially bank, 200 to 250 million off of just GLP-1s before they go away. And so then the rest of the year is going to be oral weight loss solutions and liraglutide to carry the weight of that guidance. So we're really going to see at the end of Q1 what they actually do and extrapolate outwards. But the fact of the matter is they also have 2 new product lines coming online in 2025, and they have all their existing product lines that are all ramping up pretty substantially. The company is about $10 billion. They are doing about $2.5 billion in expected revenue for 2025. They're profitable, free cash flow is increasing, no debt, 300 million in cash on hand. Like the financial position is pretty, like it's a fortress essentially. They're buying back their own stock and they're growing 90%. That's what they put up this year, 95% revenue growth. They're guiding for 65% revenue growth, but we always know that they double beat and raise. So you can expect the number closer to, 70 to 75% revenue growth for 2025. Questions?
Well, sounds like I should buy. And the growth, even without removing the GLP-1, How does that impact year-over-year growth, right? Because when I understood, I mean, it didn't look like it was too
So
expensive even on a fiscal year 24. So actually the growth being what I anticipate as extensive as it looks, just based off the trailing 12 month, it looks like it's going to get pretty cheap within a year or two if the price doesn't increase in terms of the stock price, meaning.
yeah, I mean, revenue growth without GLP-1s, without that weight loss segment, was like 43%, I think, in 2024. So they're still putting up significant revenue growth even without that weight loss segment. Of course, now in 2025, we'll see what oral weight loss can actually do for the company, because it's going to be a validation of whether GLP-1s was the main thing that was driving the company, or if oral weight loss can carry them to the promised land. But the fact that oral weight loss reached 100 million revenue run rate in 7 months, the first 7 months after launch, is very promising. Now, the thing, with Elijah's comment is oral weight loss is much cheaper than the GLP-1 solution. I think it's like $69 a month or something like that. It really won't be enough to make up for all that revenue. So we're going to see what kind of run rate liraglutide is going to have. But the fact that they're going to have a weight loss solution segment outside of GLP-1s, like, that's a foregone conclusion. They're absolutely going to have that.
So how much should I buy?
How much do you have?
Not as much as you, Toes.
Oh, buy as much as you can. I mean, that's, I don't know. I think everybody who's watching right now has heard my hymn spiel a gazillion times, and they either agree or disagree with it by this point. But yeah, I would love to have you on the hymns train with us. I know Garcia bought last time when we fell. Kelly bought recently. So we're getting a lot of Palantir people cycling a lot of their profits into hymns, and I would like you to be the next one, Matt.
Yeah, the thing I want to double check is, I mean, I know there's a huge short float. I think that a lot of those folks are wrong. I honestly was wrong as well. I think people asked me about 18 months ago to review hymns, and this is before the run up, right? And I've told you this before, that I was wrong. And, I'd like to just be transparent. I don't get everything right. Luckily, I didn't lose money. I've lost money before on something. But the thing that I want to double check is like, how much is dependent upon their marketing spending, right? I recognize that they spend so much money spending on marketing and actually like putting money out there. But my fear is like, if they were to stop marketing, will they be able to retain those people? I do believe that they have a much better retention than previous companies that I know that focus very heavily on marketing. So, and they actually are profitable at this point.
Let me tell you this. Marketing as a percentage of revenue was down year over year. And revenue that they put up was 95%.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, yes, the marketing is what's going to get people in the door, but the personalization is what's going to have people stay. Because all of a sudden, if you can have a personalized solution for you with a catered dosage, with a catered form factor, with multiple applications that have fewer side effects, you're not going to really leave to anybody else, because these guys have nailed that formula for you, and you're going to be a subscriber for life, essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of what I just want to verify through the numbers. And you know me, I'm a numbers guy. I like to dive into those.
Let me tell you one more thing on the marketing. The payback period is under 1 year now. Right? So all the money that they spend to acquire a new customer through marketing channels, that customer essentially pays them off. They're paid off on that spend within a year. Their lifetime value is multiple years for that customer, and it's going to get longer and longer. The more personalized solutions that they have on their platform is going to increase the amount of lifetime value that any given user has. And the marketing is, now plateauing, if not, even weaning off altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have a solid formula for growth that's not entirely dependent on marketing.
Yeah, and that's just what I want to verify, and I think if I were to get to that verification where it's like, okay, they're let me put in, for example, they went up 90% in revenue. They also went up 90% in their marketing, right? And that's a scam that I've seen, or maybe not a scam, but a flawed business model that I've seen in the past where I've gotten screwed. specifically for Wish, right? I think everyone remembers Wish and being able to buy stuff. It's like the old version of Temu, right? As they got 100% increase in revenue, they increased their marketing by 100 or 150% to be able to keep that treadmill going. My question is if that treadmill of marketing slowly weans off, and of course there's always going to be marketing, but my hope is if you stay and have a consistent marketing budget of, let's just say, $300 million per annum, and it stays at 300, meanwhile your revenue is continuing to increase 2x, 3x, 4x, and you're still staying, that's something I would be invested in, because that looks like sustainable. You're holding the members, you're holding on to the retaining those customers, and like you stated, your return on investment is continuing to pay off. Versus Wish, it was like throwing money down the drain. Whatever money they got in revenue, they put right back into marketing. They weren't able to retain the customers, right? So as soon as they stopped marketing to be able to try to get profitability and get gross profit up, sales just went to zero, and they ended up having to sell the business.
Dude, 1,000%. I would urge you to do your own homework, read up on their earnings report, listen to their earnings transcript of what Andrew and the rest of the management team is saying for what's coming up. I mean, watch my HIMS earnings breakdown video. And
I should. Yeah, I should.
I honestly invite you to poke holes into it, because if more smart people do their own research, they either make me even more bullish because they can't poke holes and it validates my own thesis, or they poke holes and they help me avoid a bullet down the road. So it's a win-win for me to get my friends looking into these companies.
No, it's definitely a win-win, and I've done that before with SMCI, right? I mean, that recently with the Brain Trust, I was able to kind of poke and ask people and prod, and we were able to kind of make each other feel a little bit better about it, and luckily we ended up on the right side of it. I think that I've looked at it before. I haven't looked at it in about 12 to 18 months. Looking at it again, that's definitely the first place, is that marketing piece and making sure that that's staying stagnant or shrinking while revenue continues to increase. That was honestly my only quarrel why I didn't invest in the first place. Had I noticed that was happening maybe a year earlier, I would have probably put money in, because they were trending towards profitability at that point. And, my fear is that they were going to increase marketing with that. And so I was just like, I'm just going to stick around. Now I'm okay that I've lost out even on a 10x, because the market cap of the company, I believe, is still very fairly valued.
$1 billion, bro.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it does actually go to 80, 90, 100 billion, I'm still going to make out on an 8, 9x, So.
Yeah. All right. I think it's time to wrap there. Kelly, I did give you a shout out earlier in the stream when we were talking about Robinhood. I said, Kelly, help me buy at the right time, because Robinhood is going to be green tomorrow as a result of this crypto reserve thing. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate your time. Roy is literally no longer here.
Roy looking a little different these days.
Yeah. But all right, let's end the stream right there. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and please make sure to join us tomorrow when we do the Bootleg Weekly at our regularly scheduled time.
You think I'll get an invite?
You're more than welcome to join. I was just saying that before you interrupted. And have a good rest of your Sunday. Bye now.
Thank you all.